Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
So nice to see you again.
It's very nice to see you too.
So let's talk about your lockdown life.
It's been a game of two halves, as I say. I mean, it's just like, I think it's brought out the best and the worst in me. So in the early lockdown, it was all about transfer. I mean, we were still teaching in UL, and I teach, as you know. So it was all about instantly transferring all of our on-campus processes online. So that was a gargantuan task. I didn't think it was ever going to work. It ended up working brilliantly. I was just saying to Kat there that, just like, well, we're just really lucky because we have creative writing students and they're all really tech savvy and they're all really sensible and they're that bit older as well. So I think there was just lovely kind of maturity and collaboration, and everyone helped each other out, and it was a lovely experience. And I was kind of almost evangelical at the end, Grainne, saying, online can be just as good. Now, in the big scheme of things, I don't think it is, but I think it's amazing what we've learned and what we can do and how we've all embraced it. So that was brilliant.
I did say to you, if that had happened while I was doing the MA in creative writing, I would have lost my shit completely.
Well, it was awful for them, Grainne, because literally, you know what it's like. I mean, they're halfway through the second semester. They're all really close. They're kind of like a tribe that they found in each other, and and suddenly the whole thing just fell off a cliff, and our American students had to go home, or at least one of them did, and everyone was just scattered to the four winds overnight. So in a way, Zoom was kind of a lifeline. It was just so lovely to see everybody and, reconnect that way and to keep going. And so, yeah, if we hadn't had that technology, I think it would have been awful. And it was awful anyway. It was awful for them. But then there's just been, like, as we were saying the other day, when will there ever be another chance, especially as a writer, to close the door on the world? So I was making up time. I wasn't missing things like the commute or the waiting in traffic or the, traffic jams, and all that stuff was gone. So I had loads more time that normally would just be dead time. So I did a lot of feverish writing, not very good writing in the first half of COVID, and just kind of, it was very sort of, almost, God, I don't know how long this is going to last, so I'm going to make the most of it, kind of writing in a rush, which is not a good idea, as you know. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so it was great for the day job. It was not so good for the writing in the early days. But now I think I've reached a level of equilibrium and have learned to manage time in a different way. And I definitely have got very much in touch with my introverted self. I really love my own company. I really love shutting the door on the world. I really love an excuse not to go out. And I mean, I miss it, but I don't miss it as much as I thought I would. Definitely.
Okay. But were you productive on the writing end of things, do you feel?
I did a lot of really good thinking. Of course, as you know, you and I have gone over to the other side and started to plan before we write. And that's been a real revelation. I've been thinking about that for a long time, because Pip Duval talked about her planning process that I remember listening to her last year or the year before when she was talking to our students, and she was saying, I can spend 5 to 6 months just planning, and I will not put pen to paper. I won't start writing until I know I have my plan worked out and figured out, right down to a very fine-grained level of detail. And I remember just going, I could never do that. Yeah. There's just no way I could do it. And then, of course, we know our beloved Dan Mooney, who is an arch plotter. And gradually I started to think, it's so hard to do it the way I do it, which is this meandering splurge of a draft zero and then gradually pulling some kind of giant out of the soup, and that just seems to take so long. And I wonder, might planning be any easier? Newsflash, it's not, but it does make for a different kind of writing experience that I think is really good for kind of exercising a different kind of writing muscle. So planning before executing has never been my forte in life. I'm much more a leaper before I look. And there have been really interesting benefits in just sketching something out and thinking it through. And I brainstormed a story with you the other day in as complete a plan as I've ever developed. And it's a kind of a satisfying feeling to be walking around with a plan that you haven't executed yet. Feel like a bit of an evil genius. And also I still don't get, the feeling, the kind of exhilarating feeling that's very elusive and only happens every so often. I don't get that when I'm planning. I only get that when I'm writing.
Yeah, and you're like, I'm a genius and this is the most amazing thing that's ever happened and I'm going to be super famous. And then you go and take a nap for 2 days and you congratulate yourself and then you look back on it and you're like, oh, that's actually only okay. So while we were locked down, you read your book chapter by chapter. You read your books online. How was that experience for you?
Oh my God, Grainne, that was, well, first of all, so the background to that is that Hachette got in touch with everybody, all their writers, and said, look, we want to make content free online, available to everybody in this unprecedented time. So very generously and with a huge, I think it was a lovely thing to do. They just lifted all the restrictions on kind of audio, copyright and everything. And it was just so lovely because at first it was a way of just keeping in touch with family and friends, with all my cousins' kids and all the people that in my life who are of that age group, of the kind of middle grade, young adult age group. And then my following just kind of grew. So there was a lovely feeling of, there was loads of things about it that were lovely. It was lovely to read my books right through from beginning to end aloud, which I'd never done. Maybe I'd done a bit of that.
Have you ever done that before?
No, I mean, I suppose I do sit down at the end when I finished a book, a first draft, I will kind of read it aloud to myself. And that's my last thing before I send it off, just to see how the whole thing sounds. But that's a completely different experience from reading aloud to somebody like on camera. So I would do 1 or 2 chapters every day. I scheduled it so it was live. I used Facebook Live. So people gathered and waited. And then it was lovely because a couple of times the technology failed and there'd be this like feverish, I'd say from kind of, mothers who were losing their life because they were thinking, oh my God, I've got like the next 15 minutes are supposed to be somebody else's job, But they'd say, where are you? And when is it happening? And so it was just a lovely way of being connected, first of all with family and friends, but then with the kind of wider group of listeners and readers, some of whom I've never met and will never meet. So it was gorgeous. It was really gorgeous. I had, something like, I think it's like 1,600 listeners.
Oh my God.
No, not at every listening, but I think I peaked at that, and so it wasn't insignificant. There were a lot of people tuned in.
Yeah.
So, and I read all of them except for Back to Black Brick.
Why didn't you read Back to Black Brick?
Because I would cry if I read Back to Black Brick and make an absolute, like, you don't cry at your own books. Like, it would have been seemed so narcissistic.
Back to Black Brick.
I don't think I might, but I just don't think I could read it and without kind of going to a place that I don't really necessarily want to go to right now. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, but the reading was great. It was really good fun. And I suppose, I definitely didn't have any kind of, cute or marketing notions or selling notions, but it actually, a really nice unintended consequences or unplanned consequence was the fact that a little surge of interest in my books came back and people wanted to buy them, and especially for the backlist, which can go very quiet, as you know.
I'm so excited that a school in Limerick has put Back to Black Brick on.
I know.
Because Strange Kind of Brave, it was all about Strange Kind of Brave last year, and Art School Reach had put it on, and that was a really big deal because it's an all-boys school, and the main character's a girl and whatever. But like when I saw Back to Black Brick was finally getting the due it deserves.
It's lovely to see it get revived. Yeah, it's great.
It's my favorite.
I know it's my mom's favorite.
And then like it's my favorite and it's Stephanie's favorite, your daughter, who works with us at the Mahoney's, and we're always talking about Black Brick, but like they do get better with each one, and Strange Kind of Brave is definitely the best book that you've written, but Back to Black Brick is still my favorite. Yeah,
well, it's my first baby, and my first book baby, and it was a long time coming, and it was a real labor of love, and also it's a love letter to my dad, like, so it is a very special book to me, and I think, I love it. I just love it, and I'm so glad that people are reading it now. And
I know, it's on its way back. We're going to get it into the bestsellers. It's going to be between Harry Potter and David Walliams. Back to Black Brick.
I wish. That's good. I'm glad you have that plan.
Yeah, I'm all about it. So what were you able to achieve during lockdown in terms of reading and writing? What were you?
Reading. So
Okay.
I have just read Anne Enright's Actress.
I haven't read it.
Oh my God. Like it's her at her, she's just, it's virtuosity is the word. It's my new favorite word.
Okay.
It's her at the top of her game. She is drawing on all her writerly strengths, her ability to pinpoint the emotional truth of relationships is just beyond. I don't know if anyone else does it quite as well. Maybe John Irving does. But Anne Enright's ability to capture in a really true way what a marriage is, a long marriage, for example, or a mother-daughter relationship, and friendships and ego and someone's profession as lined up against someone's private life. It is just, it's an orchestra of emotional intelligence. I love it. Absolutely love it. Having said that, I wasn't expecting there to be so much sex in it. I don't know why I wasn't expecting that. There's a lot of sex in it. And I've recommended it as my first read for my experimental online bookshop. I'm not sure I would have chosen this as the book to talk to a lot of strangers online about if I'd known that it was that.
Children's author, Sarah Moore Fitzgerald.
But anyway, look, I'm really looking forward to a discussion on it because, yeah, it's really great. The other thing I did, because it's on the book club, is that as well as reading it, I got the audio book. And it's just a delight because it's Anne Enright herself reading it. Oh my God. It's just, yeah. So anyway, highly recommend. Next thing is, I'm really into the School of Life, and I was very taken with Alain de Botton's first book, which was called Status Anxiety, and he had a whole load of books, but this is a little gem and great, I think, for, the feelings of overwhelm in COVID.
Okay.
And it's just called very simply, How to Think More Effectively. A Guide to Greater Productivity, Insight and Creativity. I'm a sucker for a self-help book.
Listen, you're preaching to the choir there.
My sister in this regard. This is our new one. You need to read it so you and I can discuss it.
Okay, great. Because I loved the last one you recommended to me, which was the Get Work Done.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Okay, there's another one while I'm on the subject.
Okay.
Which you are going to adore, but don't go down the rabbit hole because you'll stop writing.
Oh Jesus.
Okay.
Story
Genius. How to use brain science to go beyond outlining.
Oh my God.
A riveting novel.
Okay.
You and I are going to have a 2-person tutorial on this very, very soon. I'm not going to say anything more about it now.
Okay.
Brilliant though.
But if I read that book now, will I just give up on my current?
Yeah, so just to put it on hold, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of it so that you won't have to do that.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Right. This was recommended by, I think it was Joe O'Connor or maybe Gavin McRae.
Okay.
I can't remember who recommended it originally, or somebody anyway. Anyway, just superb. It's received a bit of a revival, like it was written ages ago, but it's been republished, and Emer McBride has done the introduction to it, beautifully written introduction. And she, it's indefinable. It's not autobiography. It's not memoir. It's not fiction, but it's all of those. It's just, she's just so clever, and what it is just really perceptive moments, very loosely connected with each other, incredibly observant, incredibly humane, beautifully written. I mean, it's really, really short, like it's tiny. So it's a real, it's just a real adventure in superb writing. Mm-hmm. Just to read a little bit from the preface by Emer McBride. She also holds in scantily clad contempt those too blinded by their own self-interest to see themselves or their actions with anything other than the most blistering truth. So in that way, she completely reminds me of Enright, like she's just, but a very different kind of writer. Geez, I'll just read one of her descriptions. This is of an old couple in New York.
Okay.
1973. The doctor and his wife are in New York for a conference. I go to meet them at a shabby, depressing hotel in the West 70s where Europeans who are not rich often stay. They were like two woolen dolls, and I could not decide whether the French woman had grown to the size of the Dutchman or whether he had, with a courteous condescension, simply inclined downwards to the size of his little French wife. She was still wearing her black beret, and her fingernails shone with a wine-coloured polish. She spoke in tongues, Dutch, German, French, and English, as if choosing cakes from a tray. Dr. Z met a mild New York winter day clothed in Siberian layers. He was wearing a heavy black overcoat, a woolen vest, a dark grey sweater. And when he sat down in the waiting room of the lobby, grey winter underwear appeared above his socks. He talked and told the Amsterdam gossip. He spoke of his work, of the fearful cost of things, of hippies in Vondel Park. Madame Z smoked cigarettes and coughed. They were studying the map of the city, looking for subway and bus lines. The outstanding difficulties of thrift in New York bewildered them, and they sat there as if pulled down into the mud of a dismaying displacement, the confusion that afflicts unfashionable elderly foreigners when they visit America. They who had been everywhere from Jakarta to Tokyo to India and every country in Europe.
Oh my God.
It's just
I know those people.
It's just one of those passages that make, you fling the book across the room in a kind of writerly temper, because it's just so, and she doesn't go the distance. If that was me writing, I'd have to add another sentence.
Yeah.
To say, did you see what I did there? But, but she just moves on. Like, she's just the gracefulness of the writing and the elegance and the sparseness and the intelligence of her is just beyond anything. So I really recommend it. It's just like, I'm now starting to use that as my transfusion book. Do you know that thing? Justine Carby was talking about this the other day, where the book that you just open up at a page and read before you start writing, in the hope that, some of the spirit of Elizabeth Hardwick will go into me. That's what I do now. This is my new go-to.
I need one of those.
Just before lockdown, Sinead Gleeson came and did a seminar on campus with our students, and she recommended, I've told you about this book, a book called The Situation and the Story. I'm not going to say much more about it. It's for anybody writing it's for anyone. I think it's really good for fiction writers, actually, but it's designed for people writing memoir, essay, creative nonfiction, autobiography. And she's really sharp. I suppose I will read just one thing, because I think it really is useful. If you ever decide, if anyone watching this is interested in memoir, she says, what happened to the writer is not what matters. What matters is the large sense that the writer is able to make of what happened. For that, the power of a writing imagination is required. As V.S. Pritchett once said of the genre, it's all in the art. You get no credit for living. And I just think if more people writing autobiography said, it's not just telling everybody what happened to you, it's doing something that makes sense beyond the events of your life, or the sequence of events of your life. I just think that's so clever. Another book I read was Prep. I finally got round to it.
My God.
I know. You've obviously read this.
I haven't, no.
I'm amazed that you haven't read it. Anyway, they say that this is like Catcher in the Rye. It's not, but it's good.
Sherlock.
No, it's just beyond. It's not even it's become something other than a human being. It's just...
it's so different from what he's written before, but it's so Donal as well. Even the cover is so sexy.
I wrote a review on Goodreads. I'm going to find it here just to... because I can't remember. I actually become inarticulate when I try and talk about this book. Limerick and the University of Limerick is just so lucky to have a writer of this extraordinary caliber. And I mean, as Joe and I were saying recently, imagine what he's going to be. He's like just getting better and better, and imagine what he's only in his early 40s, like he's still really young, and he's just got just this incredible reservoir of writerly capacity that is just extraordinary to me, really. I wrote this. So having loved all of Donal Ryan's books to date, I knew I was going to love this. I just didn't know how much. It's not a long book, but the sweep of the plot makes it an epic, multi-generational, multicultural, layered story. And by the end, it feels as if you've traveled lifetimes with the characters. There is moment after moment of breathtaking language and scene, every line just pure dazzle. It's perceptive, heart-wrenching, unprecedented writing. It's a story full of sadness and loss, but manages to capture great moments of fleeting bliss too, and miraculously to contain some of the funniest scenes I have read in any book. Donal Ryan balances darkness and tragedy with heart-lifting, comforting, genuinely hilarious humour. I've had to transcribe the whole book to highlight all the phrases, speaking of highlighting, that knocked me over, but some include a childhood description of a beloved grandfather. There'd be this fresh, airy smell of him like he'd been washed by the wind, and trembling dog roses, and a laugh that filled the room with sound and light, and the sweet swerve of fate, and the damp stone hem of a pub, and effortless moments that manage to strike at the heart of what it is to be human. You can change memories to suit yourself, he writes, to fit across the shapes of your wounds. There's also a wonderful story within the story by one of the main characters who is a writer, which is so perfectly woven that it feels like a brilliant echoing dream, another gift tucked inside the book. Strange Flowers tenderly renders different forms of love. There is pure goodness and poignant imperfections in its characters, every paragraph a poem or a song. Such extraordinary storytelling. This book is an absolute masterpiece. Perfection. Donal Ryan honours his gift at a whole new level. Amazing. Okay, so another one. This is non-fiction. Have you come across this?
No.
All right. So it's by this really, really intelligent, he's a documentary maker called Chris Atkins, who ended up going to prison because he was involved in a dodgy funding scam that he was only really from my reading of it, he only really half understood what was happening. He was uncomfortable with it, but because he was so tied up in it, he ended up going to jail for 2 years, and he spent that time in Wandsworth prison. And this is his account of it. It's only just come out recently. I'm amazed there hasn't been more discussion about it. I think it's...
I've never even heard of this, and I'm obsessed with these books.
Yeah, it's really, really, really... I mean, basically, it's very troubling. It's like, you know, as he says himself, if this was a hospital, you know, all the patients would be dead.
Yeah.
If this was a school, people would come out knowing less than they did when they went in. Like, the prison system is an absolute travesty, and it is managed really...
Where is he from?
Well, he's English. I don't know where.
English. Okay.
London, maybe.
Yeah, but he's in an English prison, I suppose, is my question.
Yeah,
okay.
And it's very, I mean, it's fun, really funny sometimes, but it's a really, I suppose it's the memoir that the prison authorities never wanted to be written, you know, like they can't whitewash it. I suppose it's that people don't really, there's no will to do anything about it, but it's a very shocking worm's eye account of what it's like to be in prison. And, you know, just the number of people who have very serious mental illness, and they're not, you know, the incredible injustice of young, often mentally ill, often black kids being in jail for when in fact what they need is help and support and psychiatric services a lot of the time. And, you know, it's just, it's really about how unjust it is and how terrible it is and how it needs massive reform.
Yeah.
So I kind of was really depressed by it, but I think it was very uplifting as well, because he really, what a guy, like he just used his agency. He got through prison by making this decision he was going to write this. I think that was the thing that got him through. So it's like one of those examples of how writing through something can be a mode of survival, you know, and of triumph over awful times. So yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that just writing, being a writer?
Exactly.
Okay, I have a quick fire round for you.
Oh God, I hate these. I'll always blank on these, Gro, as you know.
Okay, that's fine. Don't you worry.
I can't believe you didn't send me these questions in advance so I could do some homework.
Well, okay, it's only a minute.
All right, go.
Set the timer. Okay. Okay, so you've answered some of these already, so you're going to be fine.
Okay, good.
Okay, don't panic. Okay, and go. What are you reading?
I am rereading Anne Enright Actress right now for my book club, yeah.
What are you planning on reading?
What else am I reading? I'm sorry, I'm reading something else and I've just forgotten what it is. Oh yes, I'm reading Elizabeth Strout.
Okay, what are you planning on reading next?
I'm planning on reading Fish Have No Feet.
Who is your favorite fictional character?
Holden Caulfield.
What fictional character do you hate the most?
What fictional? I think I hate Miss Minchin the most.
What author makes you drop everything when they release something new?
Donal Ryan. Anne Enright. John Irving.
If you could meet two authors for dinner, who would they be?
They would be Jane Austen, and they would be, I think, John Irving, yeah. One is more possible than the other.
That would be a really interesting dinner date. There, you got as far as question 6.
Good.
You did good.
Is that all?
That's it.
You're not going to ask me who my celebrity crush is or anything like that?
No, I mean, they're all about books. I can ask you the rest of them if you want. So, what book that you read this year surprised you the most?
I think it was a bit of a stretch by Chris Atkins.
I think I know the answer to this. What is your desert island book?
It changes all the time, but I actually think it's A Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irving.
It's not Rebecca?
Well, it would be Rebecca, but it would be a toss-up between the two. I just been reminded recently, because I did this writing discussion, I'd been reminded of A Prayer for Owen Meany, and Ben and I, my brother Ben and I, it's our like collective favorite book. Like it's kind of one of the reasons we're so close, because we both love this book and we talk about it nerdishly, and who would be, who, I don't know, like what would happen to the characters afterwards and what was your favorite line. And so I actually have been reminded that A Prayer for Owen Meany, it just brought me to my knees, that book. I have to read it again, actually. That book I will have to read again this year, because I haven't read it for a long time and I'd love to go back to it. But yeah, Rebecca. I mean, Rebecca's like the Bible. You'd nearly have to bring that with you anyway. Yeah,
as in there's, like Desert Island books, there's like the book you always have anyway, and then another.
Yeah, exactly.
What book, name a book you've given up on?
I've given up on loads of books. I actually, funny enough, I gave up on Hilary Mantel. What's the first one called again?
Wolf Hall.
Wolf Hall, yeah. And then I recently went back to it and I just absolutely loved it, because I realized I couldn't read the third one or the second one until I'd read the first. So now I'm well in, and I've got to finish that trilogy. And then I'm afraid I have never got through Finnegan's Wake. Never. I mean, maybe when I'm a wise old literary woman in my late 60s, that book will be able to speak to me, but it just doesn't, it has not given up its secrets to me. It's just, it feels hermetically sealed. I can't. And it's a source of huge shame to me, because I love Ulysses, like I love it. And I didn't find that at all. I found it's incredibly readable. I mean, I think Jerry Stenbridge is right. He says like once you get through the first 50 pages of Ulysses, it just takes off.
Yeah, I think for me reading Ulysses, I don't think I've ever read it start to finish. I've read it in chunks.
Yeah, and like people advise, if you find a bit of Ulysses difficult, just kind of, skip on.
Yeah, move on.
Really need, So it's lovely, but yeah, Finnegan's Wake mystifies me, I'm afraid.
Name a book you've reread.
Well, Catcher in the Rye I read again and again and again. Rebecca I've read every decade since I read it first. John Irving I go back to a lot. Jane Austen I go back to. So yeah, I like to reread. There's a kind of a guilt in rereading because there's still so many books I haven't read, and I'm not widely read. Like I haven't read everything. Like, you know, I often feel, particularly because I teach creative writing, and I teach with Joe O'Connor and Donal Ryan and Rob Doyle and Gavin McRae and people, and they're just so well read, and I sometimes feel like I'm catching up. And also I read a lot of YA because I write YA, so yeah, I have to sharpen the saw a lot there. So that sometimes means that I miss out on some of the literary fiction that I like to read. So rereading is, I mean, I'm not trying to diss young adult, because young adult can be just as literary as any other age group, but I do read a lot of popular YA.
Finally, what book are you desperate to read that isn't out yet?
The new Gavin McRae, which is out this year, I am dying to read. Or maybe it's next year. Anyway, yeah.
Well, it's hard to know when anything's out anymore because everything.
That's the one I really want to read. I don't know what it's called, but I really am dying to read that. I loved Mrs. Engels. He's just a super writer.
Oh my God, it's so nice to talk to you. Thank you for doing this.
Great to talk to you.
On behalf of O'Mahony's Booksellers, do you have anything nice you'd like to say about us?
Well, you know, it's not an exaggeration to say that O'Mahony's has literally saved me at different times in my life. It's just always been this kind of beating heart at the centre of the city that I love, and every single time I go in there, I love the cool breeze of O'Mahony. I love the smell of books when you go in the door. It's an utterly sensual experience being in O'Mahony's, just in case you don't realise that as a customer. And it's also just full of book people who love books and who enthuse about books, and who will press a book into your hand and say, you've got to read this. And, you know, in a world of kind of very sort of corporate, plasticky kind of retail, O'Mahony's just is like a mahogany piano compared to a tinny keyboard. And
that's a great metaphor.
Yeah, I can't say enough about it. In fact, it sounds like I'm gushing, but it really is a very special place to me.
It's a special place to me. I mean, I don't think that there's many people in the world who can say that they've worked in a place for 8 years or 18 years, as, you know, Lisa just celebrated, or 20 as Kat has, or, you know, Dawn, where they're like, I actually don't dread coming into work. And I mean, there's obviously days where you're like, ugh, whatever, but there aren't two in a row, you know?
Yeah.
And it's definitely harder now. Well, you know.
I mean, you guys have absolutely rocked lockdown, and the whole click and collect thing, and then the reopening, and the fact that actually O'Mahony's, this is a really important thing to say actually, that O'Mahony's is designed for social distancing. People don't go in there to congregate. They go in there to be for solitude and reflection and for browsing. And it's the perfect place for that, you know, so it's great to see. It's actually one of the kind of zones of normality that people are, I think, really getting a huge amount of comfort from now as the world opens up again.
Yeah, we're so lucky. The size of the place has been an absolute blessing.
It's been lovely.
I'll talk to you
Thanks a million for this lovely. So be careful out there.
Okay. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, love you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.